I have long suspected that Ubisoft has an anti-knight bias in this game. Not from gameplay perspective necessarily, but from a lore perspective. I've even made one or two videos pointing out the constant negativity and villainy that Ubisoft seems intent on associating with the Knight faction, as every named character or hero in recent memory is either a villain at worst or a meaningless incompetent at best. However, the recent lore with Aria, the first virtuosa, has all but confirmed my concerns about Ubi and their hate for the Knights. When I first heard their explanation for Aria not being a knight, I assumed that they meant Aria felt detached from the Knights because she didn't align with their ideals and she wanted to do things her own way. I felt that was a bit nonsensical, but acceptable, I suppose. But while streaming on Twitch, I came across a new lore order that added further information about her disdain for the Knights, and it opened my eyes to just how much Ubisoft clearly detests this faction. So, let's look at it together. Over the years, Ilaria's distaste for knights grew into pure resentment. They touted righteous ideals, but while she was suffering alone on the streets, they were tearing communities apart with politics and bloodshed. This lore tidbit actually caused a very passionate crash out from me live on stream, and since then I've been fuming with both anger and sadness at this revelation. Because here's the cold hard truth. While I find this lore tidbit absolutely awful and will break down why a little bit later, it reveals a sad reality. Aria is wrong, but for the wrong reasons. She claims that the Knights tout righteous ideals, but are hypocrites. Well, my question is, how can they be hypocrites when the current Knights don't seem to tout a single shred of righteousness? I know that's what they're supposed to do, but they don't. Think carefully, folks. When is the last time we get a hero or named hero skin from the current lore in the Knights who is in any way righteous? Let's travel back to the first Knight released in a DLC after year one. So let's go past the Centurion and Gladiator. Let's go into the Knights that came out after year one, okay? Black Prior and the Vortiger, dark knights who broke from their oaths of devotion and who served Horkos without question. Even the other knights are kind of afraid of them. So they're not really good themselves. Then you have Aria and the Warmongers, all vicious tyrants who sought to destroy the weak and subjugate the pathetic. Okay, so they're not good either. Conquistador Vela and Ravier, a hero skin for a Warmonger and a Black Prior, so that tells you part of what you need to know, but both knights were of Horkos, who traveled to foreign lands and caused calamity and damnation, drawing foreign enemies to the doorstep of Heathmoor. You could argue that maybe Griffin is a righteous knight, maybe, but do you really think we can count him? For one thing, Griffin barely considers himself a knight anymore.
Some of you have known me under other names, like the name of some callous demon, or the name of a foolish knight. Yet today, I have another name. It was given to me by people who could have left me to die. But instead, they taught me the true meaning of courage.
Identifying far more with other groups and nations, living as a wandering mercenary. But even if you do want to consider him a knight, okay, let's say that you do, he's completely incompetent and impotent, unable to do anything meaningful in the lore, and, as officially announced in the current lore, has vanished, given up, and quit. So even if you want to consider him a knight and say, oh, well, he's a righteous knight, yes, what has he done meaningful? He had one big battle with Aria, and then after that, just did nothing else. Griffin has had so little relevance in the lore, a lot of people forgot about him. Further, they couldn't even make him a unique knight order. He's just one man. So I barely consider him as a proper knight in the first place, and even if I did, he still is impotent at best. Now, some of you might run to Ramiel, the first warden, or the unsung knight. Both of these are warden hero skins who are definitely righteous. But I see two problems with them. First is that both, if they existed, were ancient history and not relevant to the current lore. As in, Ramiel is a legend from the very beginning of Heathmoor's founding, and the unsung knight is the supposed knight who helped defend Ashfeld when the cataclysm first ended and the faction war first started. So they are ancient individuals. And secondly, no one's even sure if they existed. I double-checked when I was writing the script for the faction videos, and it was confirmed that the Unsung Knight and Ramiel are more considered legends than anything else, stories. They might not have even been real. What have knights done in the current lore that at all exemplifies honor, righteousness, valor, or good? Ilaria claims that they tout righteous ideals. Well, since when? What lore is she drawing from? When's the last time the knights did anything to come off as anything more than incompetent or evil? Now, when I bring up this kind of stuff, there are usually 3 responses I get, and I'd like to address them real quick before I go any further. The first argument goes something like this. You're so childish, Raven. Do you really want the knights to just be the goody two-shoes? Do you really want them to just be the good guys? All the factions do bad stuff, Raven, so it only makes sense the knights do bad too. I fully agree. There should be good and bad in every faction. I have no trouble with the knights doing bad, as long as there's some good too. After all, let's look at the Vikings and Samurai. The Vikings definitely had some bad, like Jormungandr and Oathbreaker Maddox and Bolthorn. But there was nuance to these. Jormungandr were abandoned individuals who were mistreated and are devoting themselves to their god to gain purpose and salvation. It doesn't justify what they do, but there's rationale. Bolthorn did accidentally release a plague on all of Heathmoor, but what he was doing in the hopes of helping Valkenheim. And Oathbreaker Maddox was a very nuanced character who had to weigh survival with duty, and you could debate the morality of his choice. In fact, when he came out, my whole community was debating Maddox's choice, whether it was right or wrong. But those are the ones who did bad. What about Katla and the Varangian Guard? Honor-bound and completely loyal mercenaries of the Vikings who will never break their word and bring justice to the wrongdoers, coming all the way to Heathmoor just to right the wrongs of Maddox. Or you have Gudmundur, who, yes, while dead for sure, was a real individual in Heathmoor history from the campaign who we spent a whole season honoring and celebrating. Definitely good characters in the Vikings. Not many, granted, but some that we can name in recent memory. Then the Samurai. You have the Hitakiri, who I would definitely argue are pretty twisted, but then you have Demon Slayer Mayako, who sacrificed her life to save Heathmoor from the Jorogumo and the yokai. You have Master Katashi, a master of Zen who overcame the curse of a sword and swore himself to the defense of the mire. You have Benkei and the Sohei, masters of weapons who at one point were just thugs seeking power, but learned the meaning of Zen from Katashi and now swear themselves to self-improvement and the defense of the mire. And if you want to go even further, you could argue that the Kyoshin have only existed because they want to preserve and maintain the order of the natural world. Wow, look at all these good and noble, honorable samurai with only 1 or 2 bad eggs. Now, granted, the Wulin are a mixed bag, definitely not given much good or bad, but then again, we all know how For Honor's been neglecting the Wulin pretty intensely, so we'll leave them alone for right now. We won't go into the Wulin right now. But my point should be pretty clear by now, right? Every faction has a bit of bad and a bit of good. But the Knights, well, if they aren't evil, they're useless and incompetent. The next argument I hear. The reason the Knights are evil is because historically Knights were evil. Just look at the Crusades and the Inquisition. I find this rationale amusing because these are the same people who will scream at me that history doesn't matter in For Honor, or that the Knights aren't Christian, but then they try to use history and Christianity to demonize the Knights in Heathmoor, or they cry that female gender-locked heroes shouldn't exist because historically there weren't many women who fought. So, which is it, folks? Do we use history to discuss this game or not? Because if we are using history, then it might behoove you to know that the Crusades were a retaliatory action taken against rapid Islamic expansion and were entirely justified by the moral standards of the time and today. And even if they weren't, the Crusades don't speak for the entirety of Knight history, and to use one bad event in history to judge an entire group is simply wrong. It would be like judging all Japanese for the actions of the Imperial Army in World War II. As for the Inquisition, that was not a Knight-related action, but a church one, and we can go into the issues with that in another video if you like, but it's irrelevant to the knightly orders, and even then, the Inquisitions were not all evil. The only two you could argue were barbaric, or might have gone too far, would be the Spanish or the Roman Inquisition, but even then, there is context and information often ignored about all the Inquisitions. But, if history doesn't matter, then I guess you have that no leg for that argument to stand on, so respectfully go kick rocks. And then the third and final argument I often get, Dude, lore doesn't matter. This is Funny Sword Game, and Funny Sword Game is about gameplay, not lore. You're wasting your time. Well, in that case, I have an honest question for you, you truly enlightened thinker, you. If lore is irrelevant and no one cares, why do you click on this video? Why even watch it? You must know that lore, history, and narrative are my areas of content and discussion, so you must know this is what I'd be addressing. So what do you think you're gaining by just pulling a hee 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 nobody cares response? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad it doesn't matter to you. I'm thrilled you're apathetic towards this. But for me and the audience I've built, it's something we discuss, so I don't know what I can or should say to you at this point. I can't convince you as to why it matters because it objectively doesn't, but it matters to me and my audience, so what do you want me to say? It's something that I find a lot of passion and fun in talking about. If you don't like it, fine. You don't have to watch the video. Now, if I'm coming off as a little bit heated, I deeply apologize, folks, I really do. But by now I hope I've made it very clear how very poorly the knights have been treated in the lore based on the last few years of lore, skins, and heroes. And I hope I've also done a reasonable job addressing the common arguments against this. But I'm afraid I still haven't finished my critique of this lore. There's actually even more to this, and frankly, it's the worst part. It's disgustingly lazy, childish, and crass. Read the last portion of the lore. But while she was suffering alone on the streets, they were tearing communities apart with politics and bloodshed. So, the knights were tearing their communities apart. So, they were actively harming their own communities, their own people, their own citizens. I'm sorry, but I remember when Ubisoft asked me to make the faction videos, and they revealed to me that they intended the knights to embody order and the protection of the weak, to maintain law, justice, discipline, and order, so that they would never again fall to chaos. So I gotta wonder, what the hell is this? They are now actively harming their communities? Why? No, better yet, how? Well, we're told how through politics and bloodshed. That first word, this first one, politics. Lark said it best when I shared this with him. He said it best. This is a subtle insertion of modernism. The politics of For Honor have been all but ignored in the lore. While we know that the knights are broken into legions, the Vikings have jarls, and the samurai have an emperor who rules over daimyo, that's the extent of our understanding of the politics in Heathmoor. So what politics are we drawing from here? What politics are you talking about? Are the knights a feudal society like in history? If so, what political actions could the feudal lords or kings take? They need the serfs to work their land and provide a profit. They gain nothing by harming their communities. I have done a whole video on this. Or are you saying that there's a different political system in place that actively hurts the citizens that you haven't talked about? What are the politics you want to draw from here? You never expanded on this facet of the lore before, but now you're whipping it out to demonize the knights? Why? I'll tell you why. Because it's cheap, easy, and topical. Modern, if you will. And then this other part, which gets me, bloodshed. So the implication is that knights are now killing the people in Ashfeldian communities. Why? Why? No, answer that question. Why? Ubisoft, with all due respect, you proofread my scripts when I made those faction videos. I wrote that the knights upheld order. They wanted to defend their people, to maintain justice, law, and order, and now they actively harm their communities. They kill their own people. They use politics to crush and hurt their subjects. Are we just dropping all pretenses now and just calling the knights evil? Well, you know what? I would have liked it if we just started with that. That way I wouldn't feel like such a fool. What is this absolute joke of a lore segment? You know, it all just brings me back to this. What is a knight? Literally speaking, they are warriors of the medieval period who served their sovereign lord or noble, or if they were part of a knightly order, they served the church as mounted soldiers in armor. That's what they were. But I think we've always looked at them as more than that. A knight is a paragon. A stalwart warrior who opposes wickedness and stands for a higher purpose. Now, do all knights meet this standard? Of course they don't. Just as no man is perfect or can be sinless, no knight can truly uphold the standards of honor, nobility, and chivalry that they swear to, and some, admittedly, don't even try. But for every knight who breaks his oaths and wallows in personal glories and sin, there are knights who strive for righteousness and uphold their oaths. There are the knights that inspire us, who remind us that in this world of disorder and chaos, there is still meaning in taking a stand for what is right. A knight isn't just a thug in fancy armor. You could give the weapons and armor of a knight to a Viking or a samurai, but they would not be knights, because the knight is not just their armor, not just their weapons, and not just their killing capability. Because to me, a knight is one who does not waver in the face of evil or injustice. They uphold what is right and what is good. They wear armor not because they fear death, but because if they fall, then who will defend the citizens they protect? They kill not because they love to slaughter others, but because if they don't, who will get hurt by their inaction? A knight is the child who sees his little brother being bullied and runs to his defense. A knight is a man who sees the dragon at his walls and walks out to meet it, though he knows he well could die. A knight is one who will move a mountain to save just one life. And no, knights aren't always perfect. No knight can be perfect. Some won't try to be. There are definitely knights in history and in media who are just evil, who just want to hurt others. They get a high on the power and they want to be wicked. I'm not denying those exist. But to not even acknowledge that some do try to be righteous, to pretend that the righteous ones don't exist, to demonize the very idea of knights, to mock them, as far as I can see, is to mock the desire to be righteous in the first place. Because sometimes a knight is one who seeks to conquer the dragon in themselves, to overcome the sin that tries to tie them down, be it fear, be it lust, be it hate, be it laziness. Sometimes being a knight is about becoming better than the base creature you were before, which is why I agree, Ilaria should not be a knight. For despite her resentment of them, she's no better than they are. Who has she helped in her life? Who has she reached out to? Oh, she's got the most true smile in all of Ashfeld, in all of Heathmore. Who has she shared that smile with? Who has she supported or lifted up? Let's recall what she did. She spent all of her childhood fighting other people and proving herself in combat, and then joined a pirate crew, and Lord knows who all she hurt in that time. She didn't come back to steal Coldheart's gold to give back to those he hurt, or to right her own past wrongs. No, she did it to spite him. She did it for herself. She laughs like her past doesn't bother her and smiles because she thinks she's above it, but deep behind that smile is a spiteful, angry, pitiful wretch who couldn't make it as a knight. She couldn't overcome her own dragon and gave in to it. She doesn't help others. She bests them and brags about it. She doesn't reach out to the needy. She says clearly, you're either the best or you're everyone else. Despite her calling Coldheart a pessimist, she blames everyone else for her problems just as quickly, blaming Ashfeld because of her childhood, blaming Coldheart because he wanted to use her. But the knights, when the cataclysm struck, didn't blame anyone. They simply picked up the pieces, they saved who they could, they rebuilt what they had, and they formed a formidable faction from it. A faction Ubisoft apparently has decided they don't want to uplift or praise anymore. A faction that has received so little redemption or virtue, I actually wonder if it wasn't always the goal of Ubisoft to just make them evil. If so, then I'm incredibly disappointed in this lore direction. I will continue playing this game, don't get me wrong. I will continue making content around it, absolutely. And I'll continue supporting the developer team as best as I can with a continuation of this game, no question. But I must express my incredible disappointment and distaste for this treatment of the knights. I sincerely hope we get lore later that redeems them, or at least gives them some nuance. Otherwise, you know what? Just make the knight symbol a swastika to drop all pretenses, right? There comes a point where there's nothing else you can do. I sincerely hope that in a coming season, or maybe even next year, we get a knight hero skin or knight hero or knight piece of lore that reminds us, hey, the knights aren't all douchebags. The knights aren't all evil. There is some good left in Ashfeld. Because otherwise, all we've got are the recent hero skins and lore that tells us that they are not good, and Ilaria's testimony that tells us again they are not good, and the loss of Griffin, the only potentially good knight we could talk about, who gave up. Wow. What a fascinating, fascinating piece of lore. If I sound upset, I am. If I sound disappointed, I am. I can't even say I'm angry at this point. It's not worth being angry about, but it is definitely depressing. For honor, reach out to me. I'll help. I can help come up with some good knight lore. I can help give you some ideas. You want to borrow one of my OCs? You may borrow any of them. I would be happy to discuss that. I'd be happy to share some ideas to improve the knight lore, to give a knight hero skin or hero that might bring some, righteousness back to Ashfeld. It would be my absolute honor to discuss that with you. Please, I would love to. It would be my absolute pleasure. But as it stands right now, if things don't course correct, the knights are going to be nothing more than the tin-plated bad guys. And that's just so disappointing. Anyway, I'm done. That's all the video I had for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Take care, guys.